everyone, Dr. Vicky here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center. We're going to be looking at the Venus retrograde cycle today. Before I get started, I want to welcome all my members. Thank you for joining this community, and there's more to come. This is the type of video that I will be doing for both levels, the starlets and let's see, I have the starlets and the star seekers, I think. Oh, the stargazers. I can't remember what I named it. I probably should have named it something different. But anyway, this will be something that only you guys get to see, or at least you guys get to see first. I need to get more people within the membership. And so this will come out later in the month for other people. So let's get started and let's jump right into it. So, all right, righty. Here we go. So let's start at the beginning here. Oops. Let's start at the very beginning. Okay. So this Venus retrograde cycle began on the 1st of March. Today is actually, as I'm doing this, is the 2nd of March. Venus stationed retrograde at 11 degrees of Aries. The Sabian symbol for 11 degrees of Aries is the ruler of a nation. The power of self-discipline. Society's insistent desire for order stimulates the individual to develop self-control, a projection of disciplined will. And so Venus, the planet of love and relationship, the planet of our values, what's important to us, what we love, our essential needs. Venus is also a planet of our essential needs. Is the most rare of retrogrades. Venus goes retrograde every 500, I think it's like 532 days or something like that. It's over 500 days. It's the rarest of the retrogrades, and it usually happens about every other year. It does happen often with Mars retrograde, and we actually just had Mars come out of retrograde in February. And as Venus moves retrograde, Mars is still in the shadow, although moving forward is still in the shadow of his retrograde. Now, when a planet, any planet goes retrograde, we become more introspective. And retrograde planet, when a planet goes retrograde, it means that it goes over an area of the chart that goes over that area 3 times. And so there's a concentration of energy in a particular part of your chart. And in the case of this Venus retrograde, it would be Aries Pisces, the Aries Pisces axis. Now, the Aries Pisces axis has been very active. We had the north node of the moon move from Aries to Pisces in January. Of course, in February, in March, excuse me, we have the sun move over that cusp. But we've also had Venus being a planet that's going to move over that cusp, back and forth over that cusp. Neptune, which has been in Pisces for 14 years, moves into Aries. So Neptune goes over that cusp at the end of this month of March. And then later in the year, I believe it's April, Saturn goes over that cusp into Aries, and then later in the year comes back into Pisces, just like Neptune does. So there's this back and forth over this axis. So the axis that these retrogrades are happening, or the cusp that these retrogrades are happening at, is the cusp between the great cosmic sea, that from which all derives Pisces, and Aries, the emergence of consciousness. And so there is this sense of a new consciousness emerging. Now, Venus already, of course, is in Aries for a little while before it's time for her to turn retrograde. And so when she does turn retrograde, the degree that this happens at, in this case, 11 degrees, is significant if you have anything at 11 degrees in your chart. It's also significant in in the Sabian symbol for that, the way I look at it. And so this Sabian symbol about a ruler of a nation, the fact that somebody who rules takes responsibility, takes a lot of flack for that nation, and sacrifices because they love their country, right? They love their country. And here in the U.S., we got to see an example of that when Volodymyr Zelensky went into the White House to sign the deal that they were talking about, and there ended up being a big kerfuffle. And Zelensky, showed what a true ruler of a nation is like, and the other two were disappointments and embarrassments. And so we got a good view of that, as it were. However, this is asking us all, right? All of us to be self-disciplined. Now, Venus is what we value, and in Aries, it's the value of the self. But now she's going retrograde. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you're going over areas of your chart. When any planet goes retrograde, we are required to look at things from the inside out as opposed from the outside in. So it's almost like we have to run through our filter. We have to mull things over. And so we're reviewing our sense of love of self. And then once it moves back into Pisces, we're in a more collective space. So let's continue. Now, there's actually a lot, because of the Venus retrograde cycle this year, there's actually a lot of things conjunctions that are happening more than once. I'm not going to get into all of that because that's a whole nother, that'll be another like hour. We don't want to do that to you guys. But there is a highlight of any retrograde cycle. And the highlight of any retrograde cycle is when the sun makes a conjunction, except with Mars. The height of the sort of, well, an important point in a Mars retrograde cycle is when the sun is opposite Mars. That has to do with the way things are sort of line up. But when you're dealing with the inner planets, Mercury and Venus, the highlight of the cycle is when these two, when Venus in this case finds herself in the heart of the sun. It's called Cassimi. It's a conjunction. And when we have these conjunctions while a planet is retrograde, also saying that when Venus is retrograde, she's closer to the Earth. So she's generally, when she finally does come back up, she's brighter. Okay. But in the case of Venus, Venus has something called a Venus star point. And Venus, if you follow Venus in the sky, she actually creates a 5-pointed star. And so when we have these Venus retrograde cycles with the conjunction, and even when we have conjunctions with Venus direct to the sun, it's the start of a new star point. And we're starting, this particular conjunction is occurring at 3 degrees of Aries. So the retrograde station starts on the 1st of March, moves back into Aries. So it starts at 11. When it gets to 3, it conjoins the sun. That's the highlight of the cycle. It's the middle point. So it's the start of the Aries morning star cycle. Now, before this, Venus has been in the western sky. As Venus gets closer and closer to the sun, we no longer see Venus in the sky because now she's under the rays of the sun. But when she emerges back, she's going to be emerging as a morning star. And in the energy of morning star and evening star, the morning star tends to be more aggressive. So a morning star means that Venus is the first thing that you see rise in the eastern horizon, followed by the sun. When it's evening star, the sun sets, and then we see Venus in the western sky. One is considered Venus Lucifer, and the other one is Venus. Oh my goodness, I can't remember. I apologize for that. They have 2 different names, but the Venus Lucifer, the light bringer, rises in the east, and she tends to be more aggressive. more willing to fight. In fact, the Mayans used Venus as a, a decision maker when they looked in the stars as to when to start a war, which is kind of very different to sort of the European culture, which is usually it's usually like a martial thing, right? But in Mesoamerica, it was Venus. Um, so Venus has her conjunction at 3 of Aries. A cameo profiles a man suggesting the shape of his country, awakening to a higher level. The awesome power of life itself as we identify the most spiritual dimensions of being, seeing oneself in the context of being with others. So this is the energy. Now, if you notice the day of that conjunction is it's March 22nd. That's happy birthday to my husband, Michael, who will be turning 60 that day. Big deal, right? We have the Eight of Wands, information coming in. Now, I do want to point out that when we started this retrograde on, let's see, the 1st of March, we were in a death vibration, 13-4. This is about death and rebirth, right? The death of the old and the beginning of the new. And there's all of this old and new energy already because we're at the cusp of Pisces, which is about what's fading away, and Aries about what's coming into consciousness or into existence, right? So we have that as indicated through just the fact that this is happening in Aries, Aries and Pisces. All right, and so here we have depiction of Venus in Aries, no wallflower, Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is also an energy of the warrior. And this is the Venus star cycle. We have a Gemini, Aries, Capricorn, Leo. No, that's not Leo. I think that's Scorpio and Leo. This is when it's retrograde, and we have the same here when it's direct. And we can see that 2025, we have the cycle changing. Let's see, where's 2020? In 2024, the last Venus retrograde cycle was in Gemini, and it was when Venus was direct. Now we come to this cycle where Venus is retrograde. Okay, so it's a little bit different. In the retrograde is always more introspective in its nature. Okay, now Venus, as it's moving backwards, actually re-enters the sign of Pisces. And why that's significant is, of course, because it's going over that cusp, that sort of world point of Aries Pisces. Also, the fact that Venus is exalted in Pisces. So Venus, while not all that powerful in Aries, traditionally, or not appreciated, I should say, in Aries, because most traditional astrology is misogynistic and they're not all too keen on women being warriors. But we're changing that, guys. We're changing that. Venus re-enters Pisces. As Venus re-enters Pisces, it conjoins Neptune. Oh, right. Why is that important? Well, because Neptune is the ruling planet of Pisces. And whenever I see a one planet move into another sign, I always look at the ruler of the sign that that planet moves into. And in this case, it's right there at the end of Pisces. And in point of fact, Venus re-enters Pisces and conjoins Neptune, the ruler of Pisces. So we have Venus in Pisces right here. Now, remember, Venus is moving retrograde, so not too long after, it's very close, she conjoins Neptune. Then she's going to back up and conjoin the South Node, and then eventually she's going to back up and join Saturn. I believe she backs up that far. Well, we'll see. Now, as Venus re-enters Pisces and conjoins Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, keeping in mind that 3 days later, Neptune will be entering Aries for the first time since 1861 to 1875. That was the last time that Neptune was in Aries. In 1861, we had the start of the Civil War. And then in 1875 was actually the second Chiron return of the United States. The second Chiron return of the United States happened in part in 1875. It happens in 1874 and 1875. What's significant about that is that this year and last year, the U.S. Is going through our fifth Chiron return from 2024 to 2025. And in point of fact, the last conjunction of Chiron on Chiron happened on the 18th of February. And then of course, we're still working the energy, of course, it's going to be around that degree. And of course, and when we're dealing with Chiron and Aries, we're dealing with wounds around your identity, wounds around war, wounds, the wounded warrior, the toxic masculine, bullying, right? Telling people who they should be, not allowing people to determine who they are. It's issues of self-determination, it's issues of body autonomy, it's issues that, this is your body to have and to hold and to work with. If you break the law, that's different, but pretty much you need to be in charge of yourself, Aries, right? Okay. Now, on April 1st, Venus will conjunct the North Node at 28 degrees of Pisces. A fertile garden under a full moon, enough, is a feast. Success in mastering the earth plane is measured by our ability to win abundance without becoming a slave to greed. These symbols that Venus is like sort of activating through this retrograde cycle are very timely, I think. When Venus does conjunct the North Node, we're in a 14.5 vibration. That's April 1st. It's the Temperance card. It's a card of healing. It's an alchemical card. This path on the tree of life is the path of the mystic. So this is a very mystical time, as well as the fact that, Pisces is a very mystical sign. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this is the second time Venus actually conjoins the North Node, which happens 3 times. The first time happened on the 1st of February at 29 degrees of Pisces, a prism. God chose to express itself as diversity. So this is about unity and diversity within unity. How even though we have the white light, when it goes through the prism, we see all the different colors that make up the white light. And it's symbolic of all of the different colors and all of the different types and all the different, trying to make everybody be one thing and putting one thing in charge of all things is antithetical to God, really. And so this is a reminder. And then we're going to see it again the third time with Venus direct, and that's going to be the 24th of April at 27 degrees of Pisces. A harvest moon, we reap what we sow. The aphorism is often forgotten until it is too late, yet everything we do or not do, say or not say, adds up to our destiny. And so I think there needs to be an understanding that that what is going on now, what seems that people are saying and doing things have no consequence. They do. In the larger scheme of things, they do. And the North Node is the direction of our destiny. That's the direction we're being asked to move in. The North Node in Pisces. Compassion, forgiveness, reimagining, dissolution, idealism, illusion. What's illusionary and what's not. On April 12th, Venus stations direct. She stations direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. Now, the Sabian symbol for 25 degrees of Pisces is the purging of the priesthood, rooting out corruption. I find these symbols very apt for the time that we're in, and yet we feel like, is anything ever gonna be okay again? Well, these symbols indicate to me that if we can connect and align with our hearts, right? Venus is about love, and connect with our value and what's most important. What is your deepest value? Is money your deepest value? Is not paying taxes so somebody far away doesn't have to suffer? Is that your highest ideal? What is your highest ideal? We get in touch with that in Venus retrograde. We also get in touch with our relationship issues with Venus retrograde. When Venus is retrograde, or any planet is retrograde, it's actually pointing in the opposite sign. So Venus in retrograde in Aries is really sort of pointing to Libra, which is about relationship, and Venus when retrograde in Pisces is pointing to Virgo, and Virgo is about uh, improving. So this is an opportunity for us to get real clear on who we are, real clear on what's important to us, and real clear on how we can be loving, compassionate, forgiving, and reimagine the world that we find ourselves in. Where our attention goes, the energy flows. And if we want to change things, we first have to realize that we're worthy of it and that we're not alone in this. So we have April 12th is when Venus goes direct. So it starts its retrograde on March 1st at 11 degrees, backs back into Pisces, and then turns around on April 12th at 25 degrees of Pisces. This being the card associated with it. This really is sort of a move after a little like rearing up, moving forward, right? Putting your beliefs, your ideas, your ideals, your connection to spirit on the road. This is a heart chakra card on the Tree of Life. It's located here in Tippereth, which is the yellow one. Oh, can you see that? There we go, that yellow one. And that's the heart chakra. On April 30th, Venus re-enters Aries. A woman just risen out of the sea, a seal embracing her, the emergence of consciousness. So when Venus comes back out of Pisces, it's like she's rising up out of the waters of the great cosmic sea, reborn into Aries. This is a powerful time, April 30th, 2025, 43.7 vibration that day. This is a card located on the Tree of Life in Bina, which is the black one up here. Bina is connected to the divine feminine, which of course is Venus, is the feminine, right? And so this is a increase in power. And you can see how close Venus is to Neptune here. Right? Venus is going to be now making another conjunction to Neptune. This time she's making a conjunction in Aries. And I always look, whenever a planet moves into a new sign, I always look at the ruler of that sign. And where do we find Mars, the ruler of Aries? But at 6 degrees of Leo, just a degree away from where Mars went retrograde back in December. So we can see these things sort of connecting to each other. A conservative old-fashioned lady is confronted by a hippie girl, and it says the impermanence of values, what is thought important, moral, or even courteous changes very quickly from one generation to the next. And I think certainly the kids have a lot to say about what's important, considering it is their world. It is their world that they have to face. So hopefully this gave you some insight into Venus retrograde. There is a book about the Venus star points if you're interested in. It's by Ariel Gutman. I think it's Gutman. And it's called The Venus Star Point. It's really interesting research into the Venus star point. And I think that, we've been very sort of in astrology, very like Saturn is real important and, Mars and this and that. And Venus is sort of like, oh, yeah, Venus. But Venus is very powerful. And the more we connect with the power of the feminine, which is going to happen naturally as Pluto moves through Aquarius, we're going to see the power in Venus, because really Venus is the planet of love, and the most powerful thing in our in our solar system is love. In fact, the esotericists say that we are a second ray solar system, and the second ray is the ray of love. Love. So, in that note, thank you very much for watching this. If you enjoy this kind of content, please let me know. And again, thank you for being a member of my channel. I really, really appreciate it. Much love, everyone. Namaste.